Hello, my name is Janice Paik, and this is my Korean American story. I was born in LA. I was born in KoreaTown, Queen of Angels Hospital. Grew up in LA and basically lived here all of my life. I did move to the suburbs for a little bit of middle school and high school. I went to a private Catholic high school, very small. There was basically one table of Asian Americans. When I turned 15, I started coming out to K-Town. Started going out, drinking, partying, because back then, if you had like 언니's and oppas, you can kind of tag along and do whatever you wanted. So when I first started coming out to K-Town, I wasn't a very feminine, I was always a feminine person. I was always, I guess, tomboyish, if you will. And at the time, I didn't date boys. I didn't have any interest in boys. And I found myself liking girls. I couldn't really talk about the feelings and the emotions behind it, right? It was, hey, I think she's hot. That was it. And it sucked because I felt alone and I didn't have anybody to talk to. I grew up in like the Whittier, Pico Rivera area, so I thought I was Mexican for the longest time. I really didn't know. I really didn't know that I was Korean, or I just thought I looked different. I just thought I ate different food at home, and I didn't know that I was even Korean until I met other Koreans when I came out to K-Town. Even back then, I used to like pretend that I was a fob because I wanted to connect so much and so badly with these other like 언니's and oppas. They all spoke Korean. I really didn't. I learned from my grandma because my grandma raised me. But then I would watch Korean dramas like all throughout high school with my mom just so I could learn the language because I felt disconnected in Koreatown. But then I started to realize that I wasn't Mexican, and so I couldn't connect with them. So I didn't know where I was supposed to be placed, like where I was supposed to be, who was I, and then at the time, like all these Mexicans were like, the girls that I was friends with, they were all starting to be sexually active. And I was like still climbing trees, like my face is dirty from like playing outside. So I couldn't connect with that group. And then in K-Town, all these 언니's and oppas are like going out, meeting dudes and hooking up. And I still didn't want to do that just because I just wasn't interested in that. So that's all I did. I was drinking and partying and doing drugs and getting into fights because, it was funny and I really didn't have a structure at home. So I kind of just did what I did and, I just drank and fought. I was lost for a really long time. Like just even pretending that I was from Korea just to identify with these girls in K-Town. Like, that wasn't me. That's not me. And then they would try to put makeup on me, and I'm like, and I followed along. Like, I didn't, what was I supposed to do? Want to have any regrets. And I didn't want to apologize for being, a Korean American lesbian. It's like, just refer to me as Janice, or hey, that's my bartender, or, as that, as opposed to categorizing me as just this one thing. So yeah, I guess that's part of my Korean American story. But yeah, I didn't really know I was Korean until I was like 15. Totally tried to tease my hair out like the Mexicans, but I couldn't because I had like flat, like thin, black hair. I tried to buy Aquanet and tried to use it just like them. Couldn't. Wasn't for me. A fob is what you would call fresh off the boat, or Koreans would call it fresh off the 비행기, which is fresh off the plane, right? But it's Koreans that just either came to study or, start a new life with their family or whatever. But yeah, no, I would go to Morning Glory, buy some stationery. I would just eat Korean food. What else did I do? I watched a lot of Korean dramas and I had no idea what they're saying, but I tried to piece everything together. Back then it was America Online, so it was AOL. So back then everybody had, screen names, right? And everybody had KRN or KPX, right? So of course I had to have, a Korean screen name. Let's call her Abigail, because there's no Korean girl named Abigail ever. Abigail and I, I was with her for like about 2.5 years, but she was definitely more Koreanized, even though she spoke perfect English. She went to school here. I thought I was at home. I thought I felt like I was at home when I was with my first girlfriend. I thought I was starting to create a life with her. And, unfortunately we broke up. It wasn't what I thought it was. It was so sad to see her just kind of live in this bubble. And what sucked was, sucked was an understatement, but when I was with her in certain places, I would try and just naturally hold her hand and she would push it away or drop it. Or if I try to put my arm around her in K-Town, and this is where I grew up, this is my home. Like, if anybody were to say anything to me in K-Town, it just wouldn't be a good situation for anybody. It'd probably get violent, and that's not something I want to do in my hometown. Like, I shouldn't have to fight to just be with somebody that I like, whether it's a, guy or girl, it shouldn't matter. It started to affect our relationship, and that's eventually why we broke up, too, is because I was out there, I was working in West Hollywood, putting myself in those situations and arenas for me to be more comfortable with myself. And I eventually became comfortable with myself. But it was sad to see her living that way and then eventually pushing me away. She just disassociated herself with all these emotions and feelings, and then, she's like, am I straight? Was this a phase? And maybe it was and maybe it wasn't, but at the time it was real, and I just don't want anybody else to feel like how she felt, or me for that matter. Like, it sucks when you're in love with somebody and you try to hold their hand and they push it away. Damn, that hurts. I don't think I've ever really dealt with it, and it's been 2 years since that relationship, but it still hurts. Yeah, I loved her. I really cared about her, but just playing those days, and it wasn't even like just 1 day or 2 days, it was months of that shit. And it's just like, I told her a couple of times about it, but she didn't care. She didn't understand where I was coming from, which was what it was. But this is what sucks. This is like, I don't think anybody ever should feel like, just because of a gender, like, and what society has put on us, and I grew up this way too, and I thought being, a lesbian it just wasn't the right way to live, right? That's how I grew up, and it just sucks. And it's like, now that I have this, like, I don't give a fuck or fuck you or fuck off attitude, it helps, but at the same time, I don't want to be so antagonistic towards other people. And I shouldn't have to be. I shouldn't have to be violent, or I shouldn't have to be that way. I'm like what you call butch in the streets, femme in the sheets. So I'm like real tough outside, and then, I'm kind of like, hey, can you just hug me from behind? Thanks. That's how I am. My hair is all down. I wear booty shorts at home. Yeah, I'm super femme at home, but just when I'm out here, and I don't know if you want to call it the streets or whatever it is. I don't know. I just felt like I had to be that way because I had to protect myself, and nobody else was going to protect me, right? I didn't have that, I guess, maybe that was because of my home life, or I left the house when I was 15 as well. It's the weirdest thing. Like, I'm so like boyish and butch, or soft butch, or whatever you want to call me, a diesel dyke, or a baby dyke. But at home, I'm completely different. I don't know. I just felt like I had to be that tough person in this straight society, you know, and especially in the industry that I work in, you know, it's male dominated. And even when I used to, even in the nightlife industry or when I bartend, but I built cabinets, you know, and on the job site, I was the only girl there. And so I just couldn't be the way that I was, because I would be either too emotional or too much of a bitch. I really didn't want gender to play in whatever career choice that I made. So I think that's where that, like, I guess tough skin or that butch attitude came from. My grandmother raised me until middle school, and then we moved to Whittier, and then my parents were pretty much non-existent. Like, my dad was working, my mom was working, we're at the house. My brother and I were at the house. I had an older brother. He passed away when we're kids. But it was my middle brother and I, and he was off doing his own thing. So I think that's partly why I kind of got into a lot of trouble. I think up until maybe 7 or 8 years ago, my mom wanted me to get married, or my parents wanted me to get married. And they said that I was getting too old and that I had to pump out some kids before I turned 25. And I'm like, okay, like, I never finished college. Like, that was really bad, you know, in an Asian American household. Like, I never went to school, really. Like, I don't have a bachelor's degree. I have an AA, but I have an AA in dance. So, like, that doesn't mean anything, right? So, you know, I was just a bad kid from then. I was tired and exhausted, and I eventually thought, like, you know, my dad's kind of out of the picture now, but who's going to take care of my mom? You know, my grandmother just passed away earlier this year, and my brother's kind of out of the picture as well, so it's just me. And I'm not going to leave my mom hanging, you know, so I told her that, you know, eventually I would buy a house and she would just come live with me. Now, if she came and lived with me, if I were dating somebody, you know, how would that be? And I had to ease her into actually coming out, because I'm sure she knew. I mean, she found a girl in my bed once, so, you know, I'm sure she knew. She just never acknowledged it. So because I have to eventually take care of her, that's one of the main reasons why I came out, because, you know, if I was dating somebody seriously, I wouldn't want my future life partner or my future wife to have this weird tension around my mom, who's living in the same house. Then I would be forced to make a decision, right? My wife or my mom. And I don't want to make that decision. I don't feel like I need to have to make that decision. In high school, I finally told her that I was, you know, I was sexually abused when I was a kid. And it was my next door neighbor. And, you know, I'd been dealing with that by myself. Like, I didn't tell anybody. I didn't get any help for it, whatever it was. It was what it was. And so when I finally told her the day that I graduated, that night, I told her what happened, and she specifically asked me if I was raped. And I wasn't. To my recollection, I remember 2 instances. I wasn't, but he definitely violated me with everything else. And I told her that, and she said, well, if you weren't raped, which was, you know, by his penis, then, you know, it's okay. She didn't hug me. She didn't embrace me. So from then, I just had a shit ton of resentment towards her. Like, how could you not even, like, just physically touch your daughter who just told you this story? But in that 2 years, you know, my dad kind of got sick, and my mom was just taking care of him because she felt like it was just the right thing to do. And so within that 2 years, within those 2 years, I saw how my mom actually was, and she was an amazing woman to stand by, you know, her husband, even though he was cheating on her, even though he had beaten her before for years, you know, she still stood by his side. And after the 2 years were up, you know, I came back around with family, and we had to sit down. We all saw each other again after 2 years of not seeing them at all. We just sat down and just said a hi. And the following year after that, like, I just had some hard times, and I just wanted to, basically, I just wanted a hug from my mom. Like, that's all I wanted. Like, I didn't need money. I could make money. Money wasn't an issue for me. And I was trying so hard after that first year. But I'd seen her do all these things for my dad, take care of him, embrace him, feed him, clean his fucking shit up, like everything. Like, she was there for him. And I was like questioning, like, why couldn't she be there for me? Like that, like just physically hug me or touch me or make food for me or sleep next to me. And so I think that's why I'm so quick to live with my mom in the future and take care of her, because I still have a chance to get that. So I text my mom because she's starting to text. And I text my mom. I was like, hey, Mom. She had asked me something about, because I was telling her about the duplex. And she had asked me something about, oh, well, what about your boyfriend? And I'm like, she said, what about your boyfriend? And I put ... and I sent it. And then she put question mark. And I just responded back to her. And this was just on a whim. It wasn't even like a planned thing. At that point, I was just so fed up and tired. I was just like, you know what? I was like, fuck it. I'm going to just be like, I'm gay. But then I was like, I shouldn't just put it that way, because I don't want it to be so abrupt where she's going to be like, what? Gay가 뭐야? You know what I mean? So I was like, oh, in the future, if I do have kids, it won't be with a man, but with a woman. And then she put ... question mark. And I go, yeah, I might have the kid or I might adopt. I don't know. And she just texted me back, it was like broken English text. It was like, talk person, face to face. And so that was that. And then we had a very, very mini conversation face to face. And I was like, do you want to talk about it? And she's like, no, well, I guess you could adopt. So that was, an 인정, right? 인정, how do you say 인정? Acceptance? Acknowledgement. I'm learning about self-love. And that's a really hard thing for me to do. But love yourself. Simply just love yourself, and try to be fulfilled that way. Like to the core, like deeply, not, I'm going to go buy myself, I'm going to make some money and go buy myself a new car. Because I've done it and it doesn't fulfill you. I don't know how many times, like, I didn't even care about dying or going to jail. I didn't think I was worth it. I didn't think, I don't know. I just didn't think, I guess I was worth it. Yeah, no self-love. Like in high school, like I had met girls and I never did anything with them. I never tried anything with them because I repressed those feelings. I couldn't be gay. Like I had to be straight. I was Korean. I had to make money. I had to, have 2 kids. I had to, you know what I mean? Like, I had to first learn about how to be a pretty girl. Like what does that even mean? What's the nicest thing that anybody's ever done for me? I think maybe it comes back down to my mom, and she helped me get back into rehab 5 times.
What were you addicted to?
Meth, coke, alcohol, which is funny because booze is my business now. Like booze is my business, but definitely meth, coke, and
Hard stuff.
Yeah, anything and everything back then.
To get off.
Completely. And it was a very lonely time. And I just don't even know how, like, I even have, like, semi-white teeth. Like, from all that shit. Like, how am I healthy now? Like, how am I kind of successful in the career that I wanted to be in? Like, how is that when I know I have other friends that had just been been addicted to meth for 6 months, and they're just, some of them are in jail, Some of them are just homeless. Some of them are hustling. Some of them are strippers. Some of them are, escorts. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, how did I come out this way? And I have to thank my mom, right? Like, it all comes back down to her, even though she, we didn't talk for like 2 years. We didn't see each other for 2 years, but it comes down to her, right? She taught me some core values that I can't ever shake. That's my fucking foundation, right? And she always told me, no matter what, even though you don't like it, you always finish it.